Have you ever wondered what it really costs to see the world with your own eyes instead of through someone else's lens? Have you felt the invisible tension in the room when your perspective goes against the grain, when your questions threaten the story everyone else is content to believe? Maybe you've been called stubborn, difficult, or even rebellious, simply because you refuse to go along with the crowd. If you're someone who has ever felt like an outlier, not because you wanted attention, but because your mind just wouldn't, let you settle for easy answers. You know this feeling well. It starts as a subtle shift. You ask a question that nobody else wants to ask. You notice a contradiction everyone else politely ignores. Maybe you share an unpopular opinion, hoping to spark real conversation. And suddenly, it's as if you've changed the temperature in the room. Faces tense, glances are exchanged, and laughter grows just a little bit more strained. Think back. When was the last time you brought up a truth or an idea that made people uncomfortable? Did your honesty earn you understanding, or did it push people away? Maybe you've had the experience of being at a family gathering, a classroom, or a workplace meeting where your curiosity was seen as a challenge, not an invitation. The group may have dismissed your insight as overthinking or labeled your perspective as negative. You are left wondering, is it really so wrong to see things differently? This is the paradox. We celebrate thinking outside the box, but rarely tolerate it when it shows up in our own circles. We say we want innovation, but prefer the comfort of consensus. So those who ask questions, who see the cracks in the facade, who refuse to accept the world at face value, these people are often made to pay a price. The cost can be subtle, a cold shoulder, a joke at your expense, invitations that quietly stop coming. Or it can be overt, arguments, rejection, being labeled as too much. If you've ever found yourself shrinking your ideas, quieting your voice, or pretending to agree just to keep the peace, you are not alone. There is a hidden tax on independent thought. The world needs original minds, but often punishes them in small daily ways. And for those who persist, who continue to think, question, and challenge, there is a moment when you have to decide, is it worth it? Am I ready to pay the cost of thinking differently? This story is for the thinkers who've been left out, for the voices that have been hushed, for anyone who has felt the ache of being misunderstood simply for following their own path. Together, we're going to explore why society pushes back against difference, what it really means to be an original. In a world that prizes conformity, and most importantly, how to stand strong in your own truth, no matter the price. To understand why thinking differently carries a cost, we have to look beneath the surface into the psychology of groups and the wisdom of the great philosophers. Throughout history, independent thought has been both admired and punished. Socrates questioned the beliefs of his fellow Athenians and paid with his life. Galileo looked up at the stars and refused to believe what he was told, facing imprisonment and ridicule for daring to challenge the order of the cosmos. The names change, but the story remains the same. Those who see differently are seen as dangerous. Why? Because, at its core, society is built on consensus. People crave a sense of safety, and nothing feels safer than being surrounded by agreement. When you think for yourself, you introduce uncertainty. You force others to reconsider what they've accepted as true. For many, that's a threat one they'd rather silence than explore. Philosophers like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche warned. U.S. about the power of the crowd. Kierkegaard wrote that the crowd is untruth, meaning that the more people merge their minds and silence their doubts, the further they drift from anything authentic. Nietzsche called for the courage to become an Urmensch, someone willing to stand alone, to create their own values, even if it means walking in isolation. From the time we're young, we're taught the rules of fitting in. Raise your hand only when you know the answer. Don't challenge the teacher. Don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable. These lessons aren't always spoken. They're learned through looks, through laughter, through the sting of being left out. The message is clear. Difference is dangerous, and safety is found in sameness. On a psychological level, our brains are wired to seek belonging. Humans survived for millennia not because they were the strongest, but because they were the most cooperative. That instinct still lives in us. When you offer a new idea, it can feel on a primal level like a threat to the tribe's survival. So even when the stakes are low, people react as if they are high. They close ranks, defend their worldview, and often push out the person who dares to think differently. But here's the paradox. All progress begins with a question. Every major leap forward in science, art, philosophy, and society started with someone who refused to go along with the group. The cost of thinking differently is real, but so is the cost of never questioning at all. If no one had ever challenged the crowd, we'd still be living in darkness, believing that the earth is flat and the stars are fixed dots. So, when you face resistance for your thoughts, remember this. It's not just about you. It's about the ancient tension between comfort and growth, safety and truth, the crowd and the individual. You are standing in a long tradition of thinkers who paid the price so that humanity could move forward. The question is not whether. You'll face a cost, but whether the truth is worth paying it. Step into any office, school, or family gathering, and you'll notice a pattern almost immediately. There's a script that everyone seems to follow. Conversations flow around safe topics, weather, weekend plans, harmless gossip. When someone tries to steer things deeper or offer a perspective that doesn't fit the norm, the mood changes. There might be nervous laughter, an awkward silence, or a quick change of subject. It's as if there's an invisible border no one dares to cross. This isn't just politeness or the desire to avoid conflict. It's something deeper, the group's silent agreement to keep things predictable. The person who questions the story, who asks, "Why do we do it this way?" or "What if we're wrong?" is often seen as disruptive, even threatening. The reality is that groups at work, at home, among friends naturally resist anyone who pushes for change or sees things differently. Look around, and you'll see subtle forms of punishment for nonconformity. Maybe you've experienced it yourself. Being left out of after-work drinks, not invited to family events, or finding that your ideas are rarely credited or even acknowledged. In schools, the smart kid or weird kid is often the target of jokes, left sitting alone at lunch. In offices, the one who questions leadership gets labeled difficult, negative, or not a team player. It's not always open hostility. More often, it's passive. Jokes that land a little too hard, praise that never comes, opportunities that seem to pass you by. People bond over their shared comfort, and anyone who threatens that comfort, even unintentionally, becomes an outsider. This social resistance can show up in surprising ways. Sometimes those closest to you, family, partners, longtime friends, may be the ones who push back hardest. When you start to question your shared assumptions, they may feel betrayed or exposed. You've changed, they might say, as if growing or waking up is a kind of offense. The group will often close ranks, defending the status quo and quietly pushing the challenger to conform or to leave. Even on a larger scale, society sets up systems that reward sameness and quietly penalize difference. Companies promote those who fit the culture, not those who challenge it. Schools reward memorization and obedience over curiosity and doubt. Social media algorithms show you what you already agree with, creating digital echo chambers that make thinking differently even harder. Yet, there's a quiet power in seeing all of this for what it is. Once you recognize the subtle, almost invisible ways society resists independent thought, you can stop taking it personally. It's not about you, It's about the group's instinct for safety. This doesn't make the sting of exclusion any less real, but it helps you see that your struggle is a sign of your awakening. Not your failure not to think differently is to swim against the current. The pushback is inevitable, but so is the growth that comes from refusing to shrink to fit in. The reality is simple. The world often resists what it most needs. And sometimes your voice, the outsider's voice, is the only one that can spark a new way forward. What does it actually feel like to be someone who sees things differently? The cost is rarely a single dramatic event. It's a collection of small, persistent aches. You may find yourself walking through familiar spaces that now feel foreign. Conversations that once brought laughter now echo with a sense of distance. The people who once felt like home suddenly seem unable or unwilling to meet you at the new depth you crave. There's an ache that comes with awakening. And it's not just about being left out. It's about carrying the burden of clarity in a world that often prefers fog. You see what others don't want to see. You hear the quiet dissonance beneath the group's laughter. You sense when something is off, even if no one else will say it out loud. That awareness can make you feel like an alien among your own people. Sometimes the cost is tangible. Friends fade away. Invitations stop arriving. You might lose opportunities because your honesty is mistaken for negativity or lack of team spirit. Sometimes you pay with your reputation. People may whisper behind your back, labeling you as difficult, troublemaker, or never satisfied. In families, the person who questions tradition can be seen as ungrateful or rebellious, someone to be managed or silenced rather than understood. But perhaps the heaviest toll is internal. You may question yourself. Is it worth it? Why can't I just be like everyone else? There are nights when the weight of being misunderstood feels crushing. You might try to go back, pretend you didn't see, didn't question, didn't care. But once your eyes are open, pretending is agony. There is no comfortable return to the crowd after you've glimpsed what lies beyond the surface. There is also profound loneliness in this journey. You might long for the easy warmth of belonging, even as you know that belonging, at the cost of your truth, is a hollow comfort. The world's resistance to your difference can make you feel like your very existence is a problem to be solved, rather than a gift to be valued. This is the paradox. The more awake you become, the harder it is to fit in, and the more necessary your perspective actually is. Yet, even as you pay this price, you begin to discover something unbreakable within yourself. You find a clarity and strength that comes only from standing alone. You become less willing to betray your values just to be liked. The pain of loss slowly transforms into the peace of authenticity. You start to see that the world's discomfort is not your fault. It's a reflection of the hunger for truth that exists in every group, every family, every system. The cost of thinking differently is real, and it is steep. But as you walk this path, you discover that the suffering is not a punishment, but a sign of growth. Every moment you choose integrity over acceptance, you plant the seeds of real freedom. The world may not celebrate you for it, but your soul will recognize the value even in solitude. Yet this story is not only about struggle or loss. There is a turning point, a quiet revolution that begins the moment you decide to value your difference instead of apologizing for it. The price of thinking differently is real, but so are the rewards: clarity, freedom, and an unshakable sense of self-respect. In a world that begs for sameness, your unique way of seeing is not a liability. It is your greatest strength. Imagine, for a moment, living each day without shrinking to fit. Imagine speaking your mind with calm confidence, knowing that your honesty may unsettle, but will also illuminate. This is not arrogance, nor is it aggression. It is the courage to honor what you see, to offer your insight as a gift, even if it isn't always received as one. The world does not need more agreement. It needs more truth-tellers. Your questions, your challenges, your refusal to simply go along, these are the sparks that ignite real change. You may never convince the crowd. You may never be the most popular or the most praised. But you will become something rarer, someone who is whole, who is aligned, who is free. This is what it means to pay the cost and find on the other side a reward that can't be given or taken away by anyone else. The more you practice authenticity, the more you discover a quiet power inside, a steady core that can't be rattled by trends or applause. The voices that once tried to shrink you will grow quieter. The need for approval will lose its hold. You will begin to attract different people, those who value substance over performance, those who crave realness as much as you do. Relationships will shift, and though some may fall away, the ones that remain will be deeper, richer, more honest. You will find that you don't need to be understood by everyone, just by a few who truly see you. Let this be your rallying cry. Refuse to water down your insight just to fit in. Do not apologize for your curiosity, your intensity, or your refusal to live on autopilot. You have a responsibility, not just to yourself, but to the world, to live awake and to speak what is true. Your authenticity might be the invitation. Someone else needs to wake up. And yes, there will still be days when the cost feels heavy. But on those days, remember, you are part of a lineage of visionaries, rebels, and original thinkers who made the world wider, not smaller. The spark you carry may be misunderstood now, but it is lighting the way for someone else. So hold your head high. Trust your vision. Choose alignment over approval. And know that every time you live and speak authentically, you are not just paying the cost of thinking differently. You are claiming the freedom that comes with it. As we reach the end of this journey, remember, thinking differently is not a flaw to hide or a burden to bear in silence. It's a form of courage, a quiet act of rebellion in a world that often rewards imitation over imagination. The cost of your authenticity can feel high loneliness, misunderstanding, the ache of being set apart, but the reward is a life that is real, a self that is whole, and a legacy that might just light the way for others. There will be days when you look around and wonder if it's worth it. When the noise of the crowd is loud and the comfort of conformity is tempting, you might question your path. In those moments, remind yourself of this truth. The world is never changed because of those who went along. It changes slowly, painfully, but profoundly because of those who dared to see and speak differently, even when it cost them approval, comfort, or belonging. Every time you refuse to betray your vision for acceptance, you are building a foundation of self-respect. Every day you choose to question, to reflect, to go deeper, you are planting seeds for a life of substance. Maybe you won't be understood by everyone, maybe not even by most, but you will find your people eventually. The ones who recognize your questions as a sign of wisdom, not arrogance. The ones who appreciate depth, who long for conversations that matter, who aren't afraid to be challenged. These are your true allies. So let your difference be your guide, not your prison. If you've outgrown a room, it's because you're growing, not because you're wrong. If you feel restless in surface-level conversations, it's a call to seek out spaces where you can bring your full self. The cost of thinking differently is a kind of solitude, yes, but it is also the doorway to the deepest kind of belonging. Belonging to yourself. Here is your invitation. Reflect on where you have been shrinking to fit, and ask yourself what it would mean to stand taller in your truth. Start a conversation that matters, even if your voice shakes. Seek out books, art, or people that challenge you to grow. Support those who dare to think differently. You may be the lifeline they need. Finally, share this message, not for validation, but as a signal to others who are quietly questioning, quietly aching to be real. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know that yes, there is a cost to thinking differently, but the reward is a life lived in alignment, and the gift of becoming exactly who you are meant to be. The world does not need more followers. It needs more originals, more rebels, more souls brave enough to pay the price for truth and light the way for the next one who dares. That is the legacy of thinking differently, and it is yours to claim.